discussion this afternoon, and we are talking about social justice and our faith. Obviously, we all know what's been going on in the news. We've all seen the protests, the riots, all those things. And there's a lot of people who are kind of questioning, what can I do? What should I do as an Adventist or as a Christian in general? So hopefully we can have a good discussion about that today. We've got Pastor Michael Kelly online with us today, joining us from Mount Rubidoux Church. Pastor, if you could just wave to everybody. Thank you. Oh wait, not everyone will have their screen on, but you will hear from him in a second. We're just going to say a quick prayer to start off, and then we'll get straight into our discussion. I'm going to put someone on the spot, and I'm going to ask Alex if he could say a prayer for us. Thank you, Alex.
All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you that we're able to gather today, Lord. We all have pressing issues on our hearts. We pray that you'll be with Pastor Kelly as he speaks to us, and be with each and every one of us, Lord, as we contribute as well. May it be done in love and respect as well, Lord. Please bless each and every one of us. For this we pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I'm just going to give it over to Pastor just for a second for him to introduce himself a little bit more, and what his church are about, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so everybody, thank you so much for having me, and actually for being a part of obviously this incredibly important conversation. We here at Mount Rubidoux, we're just out here trying to really pour in what you'll hear more about, and to make a difference in the way that our church should. And I think it's a appropriate conversation where we need to have, because it's really interesting, right? Like, you guys feel that there's something that needs to be done, but it's kind of tough because we're saying to ourselves, like, man, we're a church that we believe we should be fighting against injustice, but we see a lot of those same injustices within our own ranks, right? We see the inequality with women within our own ranks. We see what happens with people of color within our own ranks. And so it's kind of interesting, the calling that's on our lives to fight injustice on the outside when we experience racism and injustice on the inside as well. So, we really want to dive in and have this good conversation. I could easily come and just preach to you guys, but that's not really what we want to do here. We actually want to talk. I want to close. When we get ready to close, I want to close with some steps that I think would be very important for you guys, even in the UK, to not only deal with some of the issues you might have out there, but even help us on this side. So super excited to be a part of this conversation. And so people are going to be watching the chat. Let's get ready to dive in. Just know, I just got to warn y'all, it's early in the morning, so I just say whatever's on my mind early in the morning and throughout the day. So just be prepared for something real, raw, and uncut.
Right, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the first initial question, which is simply, how did you feel as a Christian? If you're not Christian, just how did you feel when you first saw the video of George Floyd, and what kind of emotions did it incite in you? And this is for anybody and everybody. As usual, just put your hand up and then we'll go to you. We'll call out your name so you can make the comment. I personally, when I first saw it, I was just horrified. I couldn't actually watch the whole thing. I couldn't watch the whole video. And I think I'm quite I think I feel emotions quite quickly, and I'm one of those people who tear up quite easily. And literally, I was watching it, and everything that was going through my mind was, oh, has he got family? Has he got kids? Has he got, what would his wife say? All of this. There was a lot of things going through my mind. And then by the time I finished watching it, my emotions went from I'm upset about this to I'm angry about this. And then obviously that's when, it all blew up. And then the question then was, what's being done? And then, we all started having the conversation about what's being done about the police. But what did everybody else feel? You've got this opportunity just to rant, just to say just how you felt. How did it make you feel?
Yeah, there were there were two different things, because prior to that, there was another case that actually happened a couple, actually months before, but the video just came out with Ahmaud Arbery. And that one hit me actually even harder, to be quite honest, because that really was what we want to call just, a modern day lynching, where there were a bunch of, white men who really decided we were going to kill a black man today, and we know that we can get away with it. And to see the way that it was strategically planned and set up, and the way that they hunted him down, and literally for months were able to sit home with their families, eat food like it was no problem. That really honestly messed me up, to the point where we were in the middle of a series. I was like, nah, we're not doing that anymore. So when George Floyd came up, obviously I'm broken, like legitimately broken, for him and his family, the way he's, being called a gentle giant. At the same time, and I think people understand what I mean when I say it this way. It was needed in this sense because, see, the story for our white brothers is always, what did you guys do? Like, did you resist? Did you obey commands? Were you posing as a threat? And so the thing about this video, as I'm watching it, is as my heart is breaking, how much more could it be broken? I promise you, again, from Ahmaud Arbery, I'm already like, this is crazy. But what hit me was, finally, y'all gonna see that it doesn't take us doing anything for this to take place. And I think that's what messed up, white America and the rest of America, is they're like, dude, after 1 minute, okay, 2 minutes, okay, 3 minutes, what's going on? 4, are you insane? 5, this is crazy. 6 minutes, okay, I can't believe I'm watching this. 7 minutes, this really can't be happening. 8 minutes, I see what y'all talking about now. So that's a lot of what was, processing and going through my mind, with that man, finally, the world is going to see what it's like to be a Black person in this world today.
I find it interesting for you to say that, because a lot of the times, I think even amongst Black people, what we sometimes do is we go, oh, what did he do as well? It's not just white people who say that. We'll always want the context of everything to say, okay, well, this man is being killed, but what was the story behind it? How did we get to this point? And I think for me, what a lot of people are now starting to come to terms with is the fact that it shouldn't be happening full stop, even if there was a story behind it, even if he was the world's biggest criminal. He definitely shouldn't have happened. I'm just gonna open it up. Does anyone else want to give their opinion? How did you feel when you first heard about it? You can just unmute your mic.
I think for me, it was kind of like mixed emotions, because I've watched a lot of police brutality videos, but I've never actually seen a video where you can actually see the perpetrator actually killing the person. I've only ever heard gunshots or something. So I think for me, and I can imagine for anybody watching it, I feel like you can't consider yourself a human being and not feel for the person, no matter the race. You can't look at that video and think that is right. And so I think for me, that was literally so eye-opening, because obviously I knew this was all going on, but I was just like, this is wrong, this has to stop. So I think after seeing that video, I felt very strongly about the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that's been going on, because that really opened up my eyes, the fact that in broad daylight, things like that happen and people get away with it time and time again. So yeah, that's kind of how I felt. I feel like with the Ahmaud Arbery one, I think it was more I think that one didn't really register to, especially the white population, as much, because they felt like, there was more excuses behind of it. But that one was George Floyd, he wasn't doing it. He wasn't resisting arrest. He wasn't doing anything. But that one was more oh, maybe with Ahmaud, it was kind of oh, maybe he shouldn't have been there. Maybe it was a mistake. I feel like there was more maybes behind that. But with this one, with George, it was kind of plain to see. Not to say that Ahmaud was wrong or he should have been killed, but I'm saying, in the eyes of other people, because I try to look at it from other perspectives as well, there was no reason why that should have occurred. It was not accidental. That's what I think.
Okay, Jamie, I see your hand up.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, it was. I think there was something different about this video for me. And like yourself, I couldn't watch all of it. I sat there and I think I watched maybe 4 or 5 minutes of it. And I was watching it and I was thinking to myself, you know, I was kind of willing someone to just rugby tackle one of the officers off him, you know, just kind of get him off the guy. And for me, like, the difference with this video is, and like you mentioned before, sometimes you see the other videos, there's a shot and it all happens very quickly. But here you're watching, it was the patience of the murder, the way the officer just sat on his neck and waited for him to die. And even when he passed out and he was no longer responsive, he kept him there. And like, I don't understand the rationale behind that. Okay, fair enough, you need to restrain and subdue the person, but now they're restrained. Okay, cool. And now they've passed out and you're still restraining them. And then you check their pulse and you're still, I don't like, it just didn't make any sense to me. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's what's kind of, you know, that kind of patience of the killing, how long it took for him to die and how long the video is and how long the officer sat there on his neck. I think that's resonated with a lot of people.
I see Catherine, you've got your hand up.
It's not Catherine, it's Ezra. But
hi, Ezra.
what I wanted to say was, I haven't watched the video because I won't let myself watch it. Because I can't watch another man die. But from what I've seen of the police, like all the videos that have come up in the past week of how they're behaving, how they're attacking, like they're just randomly attacking people. People are there protesting, saying anything because they have the right to do so, but they're being shot at by rubber bullets, which aren't really rubber bullets. They're like metal things cased in rubber. It's like the police are against people. And what I don't understand is that these are normal people. When these people take off their uniforms, their mothers, their fathers, their brothers, their sisters, their whatever. But once they put that uniform on, they act as if they have no care in the world. They don't, it's like they're not human. So for me this week, I think I've gone to the point where I see these videos and I'm like, if somebody was to have enough and pick up a gun and retaliate, I wouldn't feel sorry for them. Yeah, that's it. Bye.
Yeah, I absolutely understand that. I think a lot of people I've spoken to this week have kind of described the roller coaster of emotions that they've gone through, and they've talked about how they started off with being upset, being worried, and then they got to a point where they were like, do you know what, let's get some revenge. And I couldn't really argue with them because I somewhat understood it. And it was Christian people as well. So you can't, it was something I couldn't even be like, okay, yeah, but the Bible says and all of this. I had to let them have that moment of anger. But then the next question is, what can we do? If you are somebody who agrees with the protests that have been going on, can you show me? If you've got a video, just put your thumbs up. If you don't have a video, then just put a thumb up in the chat. If you're somebody who thinks, yes, we should be protesting, please put your thumbs up. Let's see. Okay, we've got quite a lot of people saying yes. All right. Are you, if you're somebody who thinks looting is a good way to get your message across, let's see your thumbs up or down. Okay, it's interesting. I'm down for all the violence. Okay, right. So, Pastor, what do you think when it comes to the whole rioting, looting debate? Is looting okay? Is it not okay? What do you think?
Yeah, it's, the idea of looting is individuals who take advantage of a situation in which there's a loss of control, in the sense of, people, if they're breaking or, tearing different things down. Unfortunately, so often what can take place, not all the time, what can take place with looting is it actually breaks what is needed for us to actually move forward. So if you look at a lot of the different riots that have happened, no one's going to the neighborhoods of the perpetrators and tearing down those neighborhoods. They're actually tearing down their own neighborhoods, taking away jobs from people of color. And really part of what our solution is, which I know we'll talk about later, is Black socioeconomic empowerment. So for example, at my church, I have one of my members, Jamaican brother, person of color, owns a business where he has a lot of the Amazon trucks, the Penske trucks to do deliveries. Well, there's a protest in Moreno Valley, and what his concern was, man, they're going to go and possibly tear up my trucks. If they did that, because I remember they parked all their trucks there, so they did their work out of my church for the last week, where they met, grabbed their trucks, and people left. And I looked at all the Black and brown people who, if those trucks had been broken into, looted, would have been out of jobs. So the problem with looting is you have to ask yourself the question, if I'm looting, am I breaking my own source of strength and empowerment, in the sense that we need to build up certain, obviously communities. What looting also does is it distracts from our ability to get my message across, and it also gets in the way of people and gives them another excuse, rather, to not listen to what it is that we're saying. So now people can start talking about the violence, the violence, the violence. It's like, dude, the violence is actually menial, because if you want to talk about violence, talk about the violence that's taken place with Black people for the past 500 plus years. But now they want to talk about the violence that's taking place in this moment. So all it does is distract away from it. While you understand that a riot, in the words of Dr. King, is the language of the unheard, we have to start speaking a language that people hear. And the language that people hear are finances. White people, for example, specifically listen to finances. Even within our church, if you want to get any of your conference leaders or the general conference president to listen, don't go to him with a letter. Don't go to him with prayer. Stop giving your tithe. And the moment that happens, they'll all of a sudden start listening, because that is what people listen to in America, and I think literally around the world. I'll say the same thing for athletes. The one reason they had a problem with the protests, one reason, those people have no meaning or care for the American flag in the way that they're saying they do. What their problem is that there were some white individuals who have a lot of money who have this perceived thought that if these Blacks keep kneeling, guess what's going to affect? The bottom dollar. And so that's why they were like, oh my goodness. Now let all those Black athletes say, we're not going to play today. Then what do you think is going to end up happening? Because what are we speaking? A language that they can hear. So that's the thing to me, rioting and stuff, I get it, but we have to speak a language that people hear, and it's the language of social economics.
Okay. I see Tom's hand up, and then we'll go to Jamie straight after.
Yeah, for me, my answer is actually quite in line with what Pastor Kelly has said. I think if you look back at some of the more meaningful protests of the past, after the Rosa Parks thing, there was a bus boycott, and the bus boycott took place for well over a year. They really hit the state where it hurts, which is really financially, in terms of the socioeconomic, or the economics rather. And I think the issue with the protest is, I've heard a lot of people saying it's performative, and to some degree, everything we do in life is performative, and this is just one of those things. But on the other hand, the real issue is that there's no unified, cohesive strategy that's behind it. And so I think as a people, it's well and good whenever we're angry about something, we boycott, and we do Blackout Tuesday, and we do all the story posting, and I've done the same thing. But unless we have some kind of cohesive agenda behind our actions that's sustained over a long period of time, and that is an economic message, then I think we are going to just continue having this loop where something happens, we get angry, we forget about it. And this is a lot of the reason why the leadership, especially here in the UK, don't really take us seriously, is because they know all they have to do is put the police out, just take it on the chin for a couple of weeks, and we'll forget about it, and it'll be business as usual. And I think as a church, we could be a catalyst, and we could be a force for creating an agenda like that, because a lot of the Black people do still respect the church community, certainly in the US and to some degree here. But if we are unable to have an agenda, then, and a sustained one that we can all get behind. I remember when the H&M thing happened, when the boy was given the monkey top in the photo shoot. We were angry for a week. Everybody was looking for black businesses for a week. And after 2 weeks, you realized you needed to get your gums, and there was nowhere better than H&M, and we all just went back and carried on shopping at H&M, and there was no repercussions for them. If we really want to make a difference, we have to, as a people, sustain over a year. Look how businesses are on their knees right now from 3 months of lockdown, and some of them can't survive, even the big businesses. So imagine if we all said we're not shopping somewhere for 6 months or for 1 year. At some point, they will have to take us seriously. And I think without that, all we're doing is having a big day out and going back home.
Jamie, is your hand down?
Yeah, I'm ready. Thanks. I hear Pastor Kelly's point, and I think the question that I was asked around whether or not we agree with the looting. I can't say I agree with it, but on the other hand, I can't say that I condemn it, because I get it, I understand it. You know, I woke up the next day feeling angry, and a lot of people woke up the next day feeling angry after that video came out, and they wanted to break something, and they wanted to express themselves in a way that, you know, felt true to what they were feeling inside. So I understand it completely. I think once that's all over now, and we've shouted and we've stomped our feet and whatever have you, the next thing now is how do we move forward? How do we find progress? And I've seen seeds of it happening, and I've seen things happening that I haven't seen with all of the other, you know, deaths that have been captured on video. You know, there are people on Facebook who've set up groups for black-owned communities and stuff like that. So I do see things happening. I do think, and I'm hoping that this time is different, that we actually do find something positive to come out of this. But yeah, you know, having a sustained campaign of creating our own economies, supporting our own networks socially and economically, I think that's where the true power of protest lies in the end. But for now, I understand why people are doing the things they're doing.
I'm just going to read a couple of the comments. Just bear with me. Okay, so someone said, if protesting and looting is what is going to get people heard, then so be it. It took for them to arrest the other three. It's working. Joshua circled the walls of Jerusalem for 7 days, and I'm behind them. Someone else said, the financial losses that are a result of looting and the destruction of property lead many large corporations and businesses to accept the fact that racism exists and are looking to change their policies, for example, Target, Wendy's, Macy's. Boycotting would be a lot more effective long term than looting, using the power of monetary value. Someone also commented, if you think about it, the average household income for Black people is around $17,000, and the average household income for white households is about $171,000. It's no wonder that the anger can turn to violence if the odds are that stacked against you. And last comment, which was a really good point that Gustav made. He said, as a Christian, we cannot support looting, but cause and effect is a principle that God has put into the world. Law enforcement needs to understand that action has a reaction. If you misuse your power, there is a reaction coming. I don't support it, but there is no sympathy for law enforcement. They have a responsibility.
Okay, I'm going to go over to Benjamin, and then I'll ask the next question.
I was just going to say that, and I agree with one of the comments that you read, that as Christians, we should not be supportive of the looting, the burning of buildings, and so on, the violence that's happening. But at the same time, as a person who came from Rwanda, so I was there during the genocide, and for a long time, even I felt anger, not just anger towards the European powers, but the anger towards the fellow African countries around me, because as people died in my country, nobody was there to support us. So nobody came to our support. So I can completely understand the anger that people feel, and the when things like this happen, there is always a consequence. That's the law. That's the world we live in. But at the same time, I think we need to understand that, and I agree with the pastor said that boycotting, things like boycotting, if all the like NBA players, black NBA players, or NFL players decided that they wouldn't play for the return of the season, that'll make such a much bigger difference than the violent riots that are going on. And at the same time, I also agree that hitting them where it hurts, like the finances and everything, is the best thing possible. But I also have to say that we have to be careful that when we use biblical verses to try to justify to justify the violence that's going on, because in those instances, when we use the instances of the Israelites conquering lands and everything else and using violence, God commanded them to do it. God told them what they had to do. These riots is not like a divine power has come and told all the black people that this is what you should do. You should do. That's why I'm saying we should be careful when we use biblical scripture to back up our points, because the context of the scripture that we're using is very important.
Okay, I'm gonna go over to E, and then
just wanted to clarify that point about the income. It's not measuring income, it's measuring median wealth. It's basically saying that from the point in time that the people
it's breaking up a little bit.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
That stat refers to median wealth, not income. It's just basically saying that from when slavery, when people were set free, white people were allowed to buy houses, therefore they could build their wealth faster. Black people couldn't buy houses. Up until the point in the 60s when they could buy houses, they were still being denied, or they were being given bad loans. So therefore their wealth of a black family is so much lower because they haven't been allowed to build. It's not the income of a family.
Okay, got you. So what I'm getting is generally everybody who's made comments and kind of vaguely looking at the comment, the chat box as well, is that most people are agreeing that looting is something that we shouldn't be doing because it's kind of counterproductive, and we need to look at other methods. Although there are those who understand and empathize with it and kind of see, okay, I see why you're doing it. I might not go out and do it, but I understand why you've kind of gone to do that. Okay, so if we're saying that looting isn't necessarily the best way to go about it, we've mentioned the financial side of things, which we're going to go into it in a little bit more detail later. Now the floor is up. The question then is, how can we as a community make some sort of a impact? How can we as a community make some sort of change? I'm going to open it up for anybody and everybody, just to kind of say what they think.
I think we can have change and lasting change if there's actual Black solidarity within the community. I think it's like in the Black community, I think it's a lot of competition. I think that comes from years of oppression as well. So I kind of understand that aspect as well. But I think in order to get lasting change, we actually have to put like our ideas together. And I've seen a lot of, millionaires donate funds towards, education and things like that, which I think is going to help lasting change. Because if we have our own economic wealth, then we'll actually be able to prosper and hopefully in a couple of years to come actually be able to catch up. Like for instance, there was the Black Wall Street, which was burned down. So I think if we can get back to that stage where we actually have built our own wealth, then it's not going to be a case of something that can be taken away from us, or we can actually build as a community instead of always, being last in the race. So.
Okay, Tom, you've got your hand up. Benjamin and Ezra, I'm not sure if your hand is up because you still have another point. If it's not, just put your hand down so I can know that. But Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, the issue and where we need to be putting our efforts is around two things. I think the curriculum that is taught at school, and the second thing is our engagement with the political systems that we have here. So I went to the protest on Wednesday and everybody was angry. There was over 100,000 people at Hyde Park. John Boyega spoke and everybody responded emotionally and passionately. But the issue is when you speak to a lot of those people, they're also the same people who will say, well, no, I'm not going to go and vote. It doesn't make a difference anyway. So you can't have anger towards the system and then you're not engaging with the system to change it at the same time. Those two things cancel out. The second thing, the first thing that I mentioned about the curriculum is a lot of the times the reason why you have grown up police with certain biases or MPs with certain biases begins with programming they received in their early education in their early childhood. When I was at school, all of my history, the bottom line of my history education was white men are the heroes of the world and black men were slaves and colonized. And that is essentially the bottom line of the programming that I received. If it wasn't for my education outside of the school context from my parents and East African community, I would have internalized that message. And what then happens is you have white grown-ups who think they are the heroes and saviors of the world. And then you have grown-up black men who subconsciously, even if they don't articulate it, believe that they're inferior to white people. And I think that is really where the heart of the issue begins, is with the education that we receive as kids. I think we need more white people understanding that they have been criminals and violent looters of the world. We need more white people understanding from a young age that the reason they have their privilege is because they violated other civilizations. And we also need a bunch of young black people growing up knowing that they were kings, they were activists, they were effective politicians, they have been incredible business owners and politicians, so on and so forth. If you don't have young black boys and girls who understand those things, then where are we going? I mean, Africa has the biggest percentage of female heads of state over the last 50 years than anywhere else in the world. Why aren't young black girls being taught that in our education? Because then they would grow up believing that they could be presidents, that they could be heads of economies, so on and so forth. But you don't tell them that story. And so it reflects in how they think of themselves as adults. But when it comes to an agenda of what we should do, I think it really has to be behind changing the curriculum to be a better reflection of what has actually happened. And then secondly, we need to engage around some kind of political direction. Because if we're not voting, if we're not bringing people who support our agenda to power, then Boris and his boys are going to continue having power and we're going to be finished. So I think those are the two things that seem most effective in my mind.
Okay, Ashanti.
Hello. So I think that what Thomas said was true, that there's a lot of people protesting who don't vote, and that's really important. Having said that, I believe looting is effective. I'm not saying I'm someone that goes looting, but it's effective. Like after Martin Luther King was killed, there was like millions of pounds worth of damage, and people had to take note and look at that. The same way people take note and look at your profit is the same way they take note at their losses. Both are the same financial impact. So voting, and then also, like, do you even know who your local MP is? Can you write to them? Can you talk to them? Education is true as well, but yeah, I think really it's really a financial thing, and it's really knowing that you need to have the finance to speak or to, make losses. But I think when people were saying, we all need to build companies, I guess my problem is the way America looks is just too much. Like the gap is actually unfair and doesn't even make any sense. So if someone's trying to tell me we have to wait for all the African Americans to have enough financial capital to speak, maybe we can have this conversation in 2100 or something, I don't know. So, looting and rioting as of 2020, I can't see any other option there was this week or last week when a man is killed with multiple eyewitnesses and, the guy in charge is like, I need to sleep on this. What else can you actually do? If there was no noise, what would have actually happened realistically? So that's what I think.
Joelle?
I think on a similar vein to Ashanti, not necessarily in regards to looting, but what we can do on like what we can do now and in our everyday lives. I think one of the main things is allyship amongst ourselves, because that's low. Like the amount of times that you'll have another Black person join your business and you're worried as to whether they're actually Black or whether they're a coon. Like there's a lot of like crap within our own community already, with people not feeling like they want to identify with Blackness and with what we stand for. And I understand why, because assimilation is a way to survive, and being identifying with your white counterparts and being accepted by them is a way to climb up to the top. But especially Black professionals who are doing well for themselves and fighting that fight and getting to places that give them some sort of access and allow them to open doors. I think we have to have the mentality that when we're doing these things, it's not necessarily just for ourselves, it's for people around us. It's so that we can give internships and apprenticeships to young Black people. It's so that we can learn within businesses and create our own businesses, and also stand up for ourselves in spaces where there are microaggressions. And I think a lot of the time, from like a psychological point of view, I can personally attest to feeling extremely anxious going into work just because I've changed my hairstyle. That's ridiculous. So like little things like that, especially in the UK, that just causes you to have an inferiority complex. And then the kind of things that we battle with on a day-to-day basis between Black women and Black men, and having this fight between ourselves in terms of value, and fighting each other. We have to understand that all comes from colonialism. Colorism comes from colonialism. All of the kind of sicknesses that we hold as Black people that we deal with on an everyday basis comes from colonialism. And if we understand that that's a sickness that we live with every day, we'll be able to tackle that rather than identifying it as just our preference, or identifying it as just the way that we speak or just the way that we do things. If you've had the privilege to be able to live in a household that's over 100K salary and you're able to speak in a certain way, don't look down on people that cannot do that. Instead, be the voice for those people. Like there's so many things that we can do on an everyday basis that as a Black community, we shun each other. We have some sort of like Black elitism that doesn't really exist, because in actuality, that person, when that white person looks at you, they don't see that your parents don't have a 100K salary. They don't see all of that kind of stuff. They don't see that you're studying to be a psychologist. They don't see that you've got a master's. They see you as the same boy on Oxford Roads. It's the same thing. So I think in actuality, when it comes to this, there's so much that we can do on a daily basis just to change our environment. And I feel that people don't understand the immensity of that and how much weight that can have. Because yes, all of this stuff of like buying Black owned, having Black businesses, that will start just from us loving each other in general. Like when that person says that, oh, I've got a business, instead of you saying, oh, like, okay, that's cool, and try and comparing their customer service to a company that has been established for how many years, we have to give ourselves some sort of leeway. And like I'm going on a bit, but I was having a conversation with my mum the other day where she was looking at Africa and being like, but look where we are as Africans, look where we are as Black people, look at Black and Black crime. Black and Black crime is not a thing. Like crime does not cross cultural barriers. People kill each other. White people kill each other. Asian people kill each other. Black people kill each other. Black and Black crime is a way that the media has told us to hate ourselves and that we don't deserve certain privileges because we have issues in our own community. The same way that we look at Africa and don't realize that they have been debilitated, they've been cut at their legs, and we're looking at them to have the same progress of a European country that's had hundreds and hundreds of years to develop themselves, alongside by using slaves to do that. But in actuality, look at Ghana, how much money they brought in just for the year of return in 1 year. That's amazing. The fact that they've only been independent for how many years? And we're looking at ourselves through the European gaze and not realizing that despite all of the oppression, we have done so well for ourselves. And I feel like if we understand that, in the end, we're going to be able to have so much more progress, because we'll be like, yeah, your business, your customer service isn't great yet. Yeah, there's going to be some bumps in the way, but the fact that you have a business in the first place is excellent, and I'm going to buy from you, so that in the end, in 100 years, you're going to be the H&M. Like, I feel like it genuinely starts from our day-to-day attitudes towards Black people. And once we break down our own self-hate, which is looking at ourselves through the European gaze, we're going to be able to do all of these big things that we want to do. That, to be honest, without this attitude, we'll not have any kind of progress. It will be something, the same way that Thomas said, it will be something that we do for a week, 2 weeks, a month or so, and it'll die out.
Okay, I'm gonna go over to Pastor. I'm gonna ask you 2 questions, Pastor. Question number 1, what do you guys over in America see about racism over in England? Do you know if it exists? Is it something that you're aware of? I'm just curious as how it's portrayed over there, how Black people are portrayed over there.
You know, I don't think, you know, we're as aware of what you know, the racism you guys might experience, that we don't see the stories of the same kind of police brutality. Every time I come out there, I'm always like interested in asking that question. It just seems that there's a diversity. And then at the same time, there's a difference. You know, unfortunately, when I say it this way, individuals who are from the Caribbean or Africa have grown up with a completely different experience than people who are Black in America. People in the Caribbean, they see a lot of leaders that look like them. They see a lot of people that look like them. Like when I go to, you know, let's say Bermuda or the Bahamas, you know, the white people are the minority there. Like it's mostly Black people they see. In America, wherever I go, there's not a lot of me. So I don't think we really have a good picture of what you guys might be experiencing over there in the UK.
Okay, and my second question is, okay, so I raised that question because we're going to go on to talk about what's going on over here, and also how we can fix it over here. And we're going to kind of continue. People have said a few good points that I've written down. We'll carry on with those in a second. But I just wanted you to tell us what you've been doing at your church, and what's the church's role in general, when it comes to social justice.
Yeah, so we've rolled out our plan entitled The New Black Wall Street. And, you know, some of you guys have even been referencing that. I suggest if you don't know what the new Black Wall Street is, look up the history. Tulsa, Oklahoma, Blacks really were succeeding there and owning their own businesses. The dollars circulated within that community longer than 9 hours. It was actually weeks, almost a month, the Black dollar would circulate within that community. So what we started at Mount Rubidoux is an initiative entitled The New Black Wall Street, broken down into 4 phases. It's really not only based off of what took place in Tulsa, but really what God's expectations and promises were to us based on Deuteronomy 28 and Acts chapter 2. If you look at Deuteronomy 28, God gave Israel the very first thing that he promised them, of course, outside of salvation, was land. He told them that they would be owners of their own business. And he also said that they would pass down generational wealth. They would not be in debt. They would be the lenders and not the borrowers. They were to live a prosperous life of health, of finance. Physically, they wouldn't have to lean on anybody. And when people saw that, they would give God glory. And that's how we would be a living, walking example. So when we look at the Black community right now, and again, I don't know exactly what it might be for Blacks in the UK, but in America, and you guys put some of the stats up, the wealth gap, the educational gap, all of those, the employment gap is just far too wide. So with our plan, The New Black Wall Street, is what we're doing is social economic empowerment for people of color. So what that starts with in phase 1, which we're actually kicking off this Saturday, I've got a big rally at my church. We've already been pushing this plan. I led a protest in Moreno Valley on Tuesday. But what it really is unity and togetherness for phase 1. And part of that unity and togetherness is on June 19th. And I'm going to ask you guys to do it. You've been talking about it. We've been preaching about it. I have a thing called Afterthought where we get into more detail with it after the sermon today. But we're asking everyone from June 19th to the 26th, which is Juneteenth, our Black Independence Day, to buy Black. We've put a list of Black-owned businesses together that we're asking people to support. And what we're doing is having all of these individuals who are behind us. We've got churches around America who are doing this with us as well. We love for you guys to absolutely be a part. To get more information, just follow me on my Instagram. But we're asking everyone to buy Black, because if we can start to show the unity and togetherness by us purchasing from each other's businesses, keeping each other's businesses, up and floating. Some places we don't even know that they're Black. I mean, ladies, I'm not sure if you guys heard in the UK about Honey Pot. She's a Black woman who started making feminine products for women. Some of us are buying from Amazon because it's convenient, but there's a Black Amazon that's Black owned that connects and ships things out. We're asking people eventually, after those 8 days, we want to slowly but surely get them into making that sacrifice and saying, you're not going to buy hair products from a place that is not Black owned. We want to find the Black grocery stores. We also want to find Black business owners to see if they can invest in bringing these grocery stores into our own communities. So that's really what our phase 1 is. I mean, it's a 4-phase plan. And at the end of the day, we as Adventists have a lot of these things already in place. I can tell you this, when I've gone to the UK, I see a lot of individuals who own their businesses, who are financially doing well, who are educated, who have migrated, of course, from another, maybe even from another country, but they're doing it, they're doing well. Adventist problem is we keep our prosperity to ourselves. We don't teach these kinds of plans. We're like, hey, come and give us your tithe, but we're not going to teach you how to budget. We're not going to teach you how to raise a credit score. We're not going to teach you how to invest. We're not, we love health message, but we're never going to teach you how to cook. We're never going to show you exactly where to shop. So our plan is really taking everything that God promised us, that even we as Adventists are experiencing, and literally going and changing communities step by step. But it starts phase 1 for us with unity and togetherness, prayer and fasting, protest with a purpose, and blessing Black businesses, and getting to the point where we're only buying Black until we can create our own new Black Wall Street. And then as we create our own new Black Wall Street, we'll go through. There's a lot more details, to that. So I'd love for you guys, again, to follow me, because I'm not posting selfies of my food and what I'm eating today and all that different kind of stuff. This is all we're talking about. So it's a good place for you to get resource and to see exactly what we're doing and how we can move the needle forward. Because protesting without a purpose means nothing. Posting these really cute things is really dope, but this is work. And as someone stated earlier, the Montgomery bus boycott was 381 days. That's 381 days of sacrifice. Buying Black will be a sacrifice. It will be inconvenient, but that's what this is going to take. It's going to take all of us saying, you know what, I'll drive an extra 20 minutes to get to the Black-owned business. You know what, I'm not going to go there. It's going to inconvenience my life a little bit, not to go to Target or the mainstream places, but I'm going to do that because this cause is that important. Our buying power as Blacks, at least in America, I don't know what it is in the UK, is $3.6 trillion. That makes no sense that we have that kind of buying power, yet our average wealth is only 17,000. So we're going to change those statistics. We're going to move forward with that. And that's what Mount Rubidoux is doing. And I'm super excited about it.
Just following on from that, have you had any sort of resistance from people? Have you had any people that have been not against it, but maybe negative about it? And how have you kind of overcome that?
I don't know if the word would be negative, to be quite honest. For anybody doing stuff like this, read the book of Nehemiah. You're always going to have a Sanballat and Tobias in your life. And Nehemiah's response is, dude, like, I have no time to talk to you. I'm on the wall. I'm doing a great work. So if there are people who say negative things, to be quite honest, like, I really can't hear it because I'm just too busy grinding out. The church is always going to give you this crap. And I'm going to tell you this, I'm going to call it crap, that Jesus is coming. This is the last days. And so we need to get ready for the second coming of Jesus Christ. 2 things I want to say to that. The first thing is, here's the problem with us as Adventists. We kept saying that Jesus is coming soon. And because he hasn't come when we said soon was, we're not ready to live with him not coming yet. There are so many people in our Adventist denomination, particularly of color, who thought Jesus was coming, are in their 70s now and have no Social Security. So they have no way to be able to live. Adventists never, the Adventist system was never structured for Jesus not to have been here by now. That's why our structure is so antiquated. That is why we are not current. We are literally 25 years behind everybody, because every year, and even with the new stuff that happens, we're always in a place of Jesus coming soon, but we've never prepared for what happens if he doesn't come. And so what we don't understand is this stuff that we're talking about now with the new Black Wall Street based on Deuteronomy 28 and Acts 2 is actually preparing us for the second coming of Jesus. Because what Adventists love to say is last days, 2300-day prophecy, Revelation, and all this kind of stuff, what's happening with the government. And they forget clearly that Matthew 24 and 25 is all about the last days. And what does Jesus say in Matthew 25? When I was sick, you healed me. When I was in prison, you visited me. Hungry, you fed me. That's literally what hasn't been happening for Black people. They've been disproportionately in prison. They've been disproportionately out of the right kinds of food, hence the reason we lead in every category of death except for suicide in comparison to our white brothers. And when you were sick, you healed me, you clothed me. We have not been taking care of the mission, which is the last days. So social justice work is last day preparation. Unfortunately, we disconnected it from the two. So real talk, if we're a real last day church, we'll actually be doing this kind of work. Because the easy work is to sit there and preach about Jesus coming. And then when he doesn't show up, you got a bunch of people who are left worse than when we first found him. So.
Okay. I have one more question for you, but before I ask that, I'm just going to ask if anybody has any questions for Pastor really quickly. Just to put your hand up and just kind of, or put the question in the comments if you're not comfortable saying it out loud. Any questions for Pastor? So what I'm getting from you, Pastor, is that you're very much all about the financial side of things. What sort of steps are you taking to bring the unity and getting everybody on that common goal?
Yeah. So, again, and it's not simply the financial, it is a, 4-phase plan. But here's the reason, again, the financial part does become important, because again, God's promise with Israel when they were coming out of slavery and oppression was the way that you're not going to have to return to that is you are going to be totally and completely dependent on me. And part of the results of you being dependent on me is me creating an atmosphere in your life, in your community, where you don't have to reach out to Philistines, you don't have to reach out to Babylonians in order to build, to build yourself up. But the important thing about this unity and Acts, which is why we say it's based on Deuteronomy 28 and Acts 2, is you see, when I go and support your business, I'm building relationship as well. I'm not just literally sitting there, throwing out your dollar. I'm actually connecting with you, because that's really what we as, people of color actually do. We connect. What did Acts 2 say? They met in each other's houses daily. They had a good rapport with one another. And when other people had need, they would connect. And so that's what we want to be able to do, is let our brothers and our sisters know, like, yo, we're in this with you. We just believe that the first way to do that is to say, hey, look, let me show you how I'm in here with you. I'm going to give you something that I know that you need. It's not just my time. It's not just my support, but it's also going to be my treasure as well. Think about what happened in Acts. When anyone had need, what did they do? They sold what they had in order to give it to them. So that was the way of being able to pour back into them. So that's what we want to do, is build unity and togetherness, through connecting with each other's businesses, as well as, protesting with a purpose. What does that mean? We're connecting with each other. We're out there. We're on the front lines, together. Togetherness is super important. Think about what's happening right now. Everyone knows what the problem is, but have you even seen one unified solution out there? No, everybody's talking this, and one person's going here and every person's going there, but we're not able to get together, which is why, that's why we, at Rubidoux are just pushing the new Black Wall Street, in the sense of we have one thing that we can get behind. And when we get behind one thing, what do we start doing? We start getting a little bit momentum. So for example, another phase of this plan, which is I'm not sure how you guys can do this. I'm actually going to double check. But in the States, we have something which is called qualified immunity. The officer that you saw kill George Floyd, he had his knee on his neck. In court, this clause called qualified immunity protects the officers from being convicted of that crime. Because in order for them to be convicted of that crime, the prosecuting attorney needs to show how another officer used that same force and was convicted. In other words, in order for the conviction to take place, the prosecutor has to prove that something similar had also taken place. So if it's never taken place, that officer is now protected. There's a bill that's going to our House Senate that is to get rid of this because it allows officers now to be held accountable. So what we're rallying people around is to be able to call into their congressmen, to send emails and to send texts to get this law done away with. Now, that's not sexy. That's not a cool post at a protest, but these are the kinds of things that we need to get done. And these are all parts of our 4-phase plan that imagine now, if 10,000 or 100,000 people from the UK called in about a United States law, like people are going to start to pay attention to stuff like that. But these are the kinds of things why I think a solid plan is important, because we all can be moving lockstep together to see some of these changes take place.
Sorry,
Pastor,
Tom.
there's a question. Is it problematic for Black people to be police officers?
Actually, I don't know if that's directly specifically towards me. Actually, no. As a part of our plan in phase 3, which is after we've helped people, you become more empowered with knowledge, cleaning up credit scores, raising education levels, changing health disparities. In phase 3, now we want to start really acting and living what that new Black Wall Street looks like. Jobs, careers, and things like that. And part of the solution is having our own people being able to police us. Because you see, a Black man is going to walk into a situation and see another Black man and not be as intimidated, not be as as worried, as scared, and actually might even know how to talk to them based on where they're coming from. So it's not to say only Black people police Black people, but we need more Black people in the police force so that they can start to actually share to the other white police officers, or even other police officers who are not of color, to say, hey, look, this is how you deal with people in our community. And that's, I think, is important. So it's absolutely the opposite. We need more Black law enforcement. Absolutely, we need more Black law enforcement.
Tom?
Pastor, how do we go out as an organization to begin dealing with this problem of racial injustice when it's so pervasive within our church? So over here in this part of the world, in the Trans-European division, I have felt a certain awkwardness within myself over the last, so to give you context, our youth director was furloughed. He was put on the job retention scheme, and so can't work essentially. And so I've been helping him with a team of people to do some stuff for online. And one of the things that we are beginning to talk more about now as a result of what's been happening is racial injustice. But it's felt a little bit awkward to me from time to time, because I'm going out there to deal with a problem that is completely pervasive within our own ranks. So do we have any right to really go outside to be telling people racial injustice, when our own Black ministers are facing the same thing within our own ranks? Should we begin the cleanup in our house before we go out, or can we do simultaneous work outside and inside?
Yeah, I actually think it's a little bit of both and. But think about your house this way. There are two things that are going to happen. If someone pulls up to your lawn, right? Let's say they go to your house and they see that there's trash all in the front yard. They'll make an assumption about what's going on in the house, and they might not want to be a part of the house at all, because they're like, I don't want to walk in that house, because if the front yard looks like that, then man, I don't even want to go in the house. Imagine what that looks like. But imagine if you have a clean front yard, and then someone is willing to step inside your house, and then they get in the house and they find your house is a mess. Well, at least you're in the house. And now I can maybe talk to you and work with you. So what I look at is the social justice work that we're doing out in the front, even if we can't clean up what's on the inside, is at least making sure that when people see the front lawn of your individual church, they're saying, man, that actually looks pretty clean. I see exactly what they're trying to do. This church stands for it. Then they walk in and say, wait a second, y'all don't ordain women? Wait a second, y'all got black and white conferences? All right, I'm not sure, but I'm here anyway. How can I help? So I think we need to keep pushing the stuff on the outside, because if all I'm doing is focus on cleaning up what's in the house, I'm missing the people who are driving past my lawn all the time. So that's what I would suggest. Keep pushing that. The reform inside the church, actually, as crazy as it sounds, is actually going to be a little more difficult than the reform outside the church, because people inside the church will hide behind religion to cover their sexism and racism.
Joelle?
I just wanted to ask, what are the timescales for the new Black Wall Street? So obviously you have the different phases. So just be interesting to know what timescales you've set to that, if any.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So it's not necessarily, we don't look at it necessarily as phase one is being over and then we're in phase two. We look at it as more of principles that we're starting with, that we're moving along 4 phases with. So for example, we're never going to stop blessing Black businesses. We're never going to stop praying and fasting, and we're never going to stop protesting with a purpose. The phase one is really just what's going to push this snowball moving down the aisle. So we're never going to stop educating people on credit scores, telling them about the programs for first-time home buyers, scholarships, education, all those things. So it's a continuous thing, but it's something when you look at that it's not an event and it's not a program. It's actually the way that my church is thinking. And we really think, obviously, it's very biblical. So everything that we do is revolving around that. Now, we call it the new Black Wall Street, but it's not exclusive to Black people, in the sense that we're reaching out to individuals who are in and experiencing the same kinds of plight as Black people. But obviously, we're focusing on that because it's majority for us. So people who are socially and economically oppressed, people who are having incredible health disparities. I mean, within our community, there are people dying from diseases that are easily preventable. So we want to be able to push all of that. So it's very holistic, but it's principles that are taking place over the phase of the lifetime. As long as I'm the pastor there at Rubidoux, this is all that we're really pushing and doing. And my thing for us is the more we can get people around it to push this, I think the more momentum we'll start to see and difference that we'll be able to make, which is why we're not just saying bless any Black business. We want to start first with a small list so we can see that 1 or 2 or maybe even 10 businesses feel the impact of over 2,000 plus people just boom, all of a sudden pouring into them. And then we'll start to make some more intentional switches.
Pastor, a question.
Mm-hmm.
Are we also concerned with social justice for the LGBT community within our churches?
I think we should be concerned with the injustice of any group of people that is being discriminated against. This isn't a popular thing for me to say. I just think it, in a lot of cases, cheapens the experience of Blacks in America when we try to compare the two. We were stolen from a country. We were taken over here. We were asked to build this, not asked, we were told to build this place called America for free while our families were ripped apart. We fought in wars and for a country that when we came back wouldn't allow us to sit down and eat in the same restaurants. And so I think that's a very different experience. At the same time, I do believe that the LGBTQ community has been discriminated against. And so we'll stand with discrimination. And I don't think standing with discrimination means that I agree with what it is that you're doing. There's a lot of Blacks I don't agree with what they're doing, but I don't agree with the fact that they're being discriminated against. So I think we can do that. I just don't like to compare the two because they're not even remotely close to what Blacks in America, have experienced.
Okay, and another question from the chat. How do you reconcile your faith with the reality of being Black / racial injustice and the knowledge that as Black people, we exist in a world that has persecuted us and consider us as inferior for 500 plus years?
Read that question just one more time. I want to make sure I got all of it.
Sure. It says, how do you reconcile your faith with the reality of being Black / racial injustice and the knowledge that as Black people, we exist in a world that has persecuted us and considered us as inferior for over 500 years?
Yeah, so I'm gonna just keep it all the way 100. I'm a pastor, so my faith is supposed to be dope and all that, and I can have a lack of faith every now and then. But I'm gonna tell you very honestly on that one question right there, I have not just questioned my faith, I have questioned God's existence. And for that, what that exact question, because I literally don't understand how it doesn't seem that God has given Black people a break. Like we never seem to get a break. And I'm like, God, I just don't understand that. And so when I keep seeing stuff like this happening, I say to myself, like, do you really exist? Because how can you exist and we just get it? The Jews survived the Holocaust. We could go through a list of the Japanese Americans, even survived the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Every group of people has made it, actually I should say except for two, Native Americans and Black people. So man, I gotta tell you that's a very, very tough question. The thing that kind of re-sparked my faith and hope in the fact that God is honestly still continually looking out for us is when I saw how the world responded to what just took place. When I saw how everybody, you have folk in Palestine, murals and protesting. I said, okay, I see, God, what you're doing. And I think you're up to something. And I actually believe personally, I'm not putting dates or anything, that I think that God says, Michael, while you're thinking I'm not existing because of what's happening to Black people, it's going to be what happens to Black people and how y'all come out of it that's going to usher in my second coming. And so I actually believe that it is our honor to have gone through, because I think he knows that we're the only ones who can handle it with him, and that we're going to be these examples of what true Christianity looks like in the face of oppression.
Amen. Final question. How can we still love white people with everything that's happening?
The same way somebody loves you with all the stuff that you do. I know we don't do the same kinds of things, but at the end of the day, sin is sin. So if I can love somebody, if someone could love me and I'm wicked, I might have that same kind of wickedness, but God doesn't classify wickedness in different ways. Sin is sin. And so all of us are sinners. And if I can love one sinner, I can love another. I'm seeing in the chat too, everybody look, you got the change.org site. Sign that petition, please. That's huge. That's big. And put on your Instagram, tag me in it, or, whatever it is that you guys sign that petition for qualified immunity. That is huge. I want to thank you guys so much. Like, these are the kinds of things that we need. These are the action steps that are so important for us to actually see change. So good luck in posting it up, Mr. Dell.
Pastor, just a quick clarification. You've said that you're still going to be protesting along with everything else, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. What if you're doing all these other things? Why would you continue to protest?
Yeah, so because remember what a protest is. I think sometimes we think a protest is only sitting down, marching somewhere or walking around with signs. The Montgomery bus boycott is a protest. I'm protesting my opinion to the opposition of your opinion. And so anything that we do that has an opposite opinion to that of the popular belief or the system that we believe is unjust is by definition a protest. So we will always continue to protest until there is nothing to protest about. And that's what's important. And this is what I'm telling you. This is a strategy of people in power. Let y'all protest for 2 weeks and then y'all will forget about it. We have to keep protesting. We have to keep having rallies, which is why we call it protesting with a purpose. We're not just out there saying, say his name, Black Lives Matter. We're saying that, and then we're telling people about qualified immunity. We're doing that, and then we're telling people, come to our class so you can get out of debt. We're doing that, and then we're telling people, hey, we need your help signing this petition to get this liquor store out and a Whole Foods store put in this neighborhood. So the protest always has a purpose connected to it. But what a protest does is it allows people to voice their opinion, and it also allows us to rally people together that we typically might not have access to.
Okay, and in terms of funding, how are you funding everything that you've kind of got planned out?
Yeah, I think that's great. So I'm again, just keeping it 100. It's people like you. Now I'm just looking. I'm kind of getting an idea. I know Black people don't look old, so some of y'all could be like 50, looking like you're 20. But I'm seeing a lot of young faces, at least on here, and I'm going to tell you how we've been able to get funding. Young people now have said, I'm giving my money to an organization, unfortunately, the Adventist Church, that literally does not support the things that, I believe biblically should be happening. And, the money is just being used in some very interesting ways. So it's actually young people and older, of course, as well, like yourselves, who literally have hit me up and said, Michael, I see what you're doing. I know it's of God. Where can I donate for this cause to be able to move forward? So it's people like you who have done it. And I'm going to say something that's very unpopular, but tithe is important in the sense of giving some of your tithe to the conference, because that's how you pay your local pastors. But do not believe that it is only tithe because it goes to the conference. Tithe is when it's used biblically, not where it goes. It's how it's used, not where it goes. And so that's important, I think, for you guys to be able to hear. Because a lot of us have been giving money to a system that does not support us nor our causes.
Okay, thank you very much, Pastor. You've given us a lot of insight, a lot of ideas as well. I think one thing I'm getting out of it is just that need for action, as opposed to sitting down. I think this whole week has been a lot of online texting. Have you seen this? Yeah, we also, I went to a protest yesterday. I know quite a few people went yesterday. So we're starting to do that action. But I do feel like it's important to remember that it does start with all of us. I have conversations with people who say, oh, but as Black people, we don't really have a leader who's leading us. And my response has always been, you've got to start it, you've got to start it, you've got to start it. But what would you say to that? How could you encourage people? How could we as Christians encourage people to kind of keep going?
I think there's two things. In the absence of one leader, an MLK or Dr. King, I think what you can do is get behind other people or organizations that are aligned with what it is that you believe in. So I'll say this, you guys might be in the UK, but if you really believe in what we're doing in Mount Rubidoux, then plug in there. Like absolutely 100% plug into what we're doing here, because you might even feel more comfortable because hey, it's a Christian man, group of people, pastoral staff connected to the organization. Find people who believe in what it is that you believe in and partner and connect with them. I think that's the first thing. And I see a couple, people who are asking some questions, how they can connect with me. And I put something up and I'll say something about that in a second. The second thing too is, here's a really unique thing about 2020. Everybody has their own circle of influence with this. Like you guys have people who are following you right now on Instagram, who are following you on Twitter, because they're connected to you in some way. And you don't have to have a platform of 200,000 people to affect the change that is necessary. So I would say, in the absence of you connecting to an organization, in the absence of you finding a church, and you're like, oh my goodness, what do we do? Where's the leader? Man, you can be that leader with the people that you have on Instagram, with the people you have on Facebook and Twitter. And you are putting out positive stuff, and you're developing even your own plan, that your own small group starts grassroots. To be quite honest, that's actually literally how the civil rights movement got started. It was a small group of people that were like, enough is enough. And actually, as I learned from one of my pastors on staff with me, Dr. King didn't start that. They already had just got a group of people together, had a meeting one night and said, hey, we voted you to be the president of this thing. And he was like, oh, really? But it started with that small group of people. So I think you guys, can do that. There's a link. I'll put my website up here. Someone asked, how can we do that? So there's our website, Mount Rubidoux. I sent it privately to somebody. Hold on one second. Here's the, there we go. MountRubidoUxLive.com. You'll see a section on there that says donate, and you can go to Secure Give. And there's 2 areas that are covering everything that's happened now. It says COVID-19 and evangelism. Now, evangelism is not simply for us preaching, running a Revelation seminar. Evangelism is our ability to uplift our community. That's just the term we use because it's easier for people to donate to it that way. But any one of those 2 areas, COVID-19 or evangelism, goes directly to the New Black Wall Street, what it is that we are doing, which is a socioeconomic empowerment for Blacks. It's all tax deductible, so you can get a tax thing there, which is why we keep it within the church. And that's why I'm so honored that my church is 100%, behind this. Again, if any of you guys want to hit me up personally, I put my Instagram in there. And then I could also give you my WhatsApp as well. I think whoever has my WhatsApp, if you guys have my WhatsApp already, you can share it with everybody and they can hit me up there and we can talk more. So I'm going to ask you guys which option, either COVID-19 or evangelism. Either one of those 2 are going to go directly to this. Only reason we can't call it the New Black Wall Street is just because we're slightly might have a copyright issue there that we're working through. But those 2, I promise you 1,000%, that's what it goes to. And we give reports on what we've done. So just for example, every single Sabbath for the last 2.5 months, we have fed over 400 people. So ever since COVID-19 has started, we have fed over 5,000 people with grocery bags and all that different kind of stuff. So people know, hey, our money is tangibly being used for this. So I want to let you guys know, assure you, this is not going to a Revelation seminar. Not that that's a bad thing, but I hope you guys know what I'm saying. It's actually going to every single cause that we just talked about today.
Okay, right. Thank you very much, Pastor. I think I've learned quite a lot, and we're gonna have a bit more time for more discussion for about another half an hour or so. If anyone else still wants to make comments, I know you probably have to shoot off soon, but do you have any last things you want to say before you go?
Yeah, I would just say, guys, I'm super proud of you for having this conversation. I love what you guys are doing. Just don't let it only be a conversation. Figure out what are the issues in the UK that are taking place with people of color. I'm ignorant to that, as an American, and rally around people who in churches that are doing that. I'm also going to say something else that's crazy. I know how frustrated it is. I go over to the UK twice a year. I just haven't been for the last 1.5 years. And I speak in a lot of the different churches. Actually, I did something in Reading a little bit ago, and I get the frustration. You guys are trying to work, but the church is pushing against you, and you're trying to do stuff. I'm going to just say to you guys 2 things. Stop attending a church that doesn't believe in the causes you believe in. Find a church in your area, Adventist church in your area that believes in your causes, and flood them. Stop trying to fight that inward fight, because it takes away the fight from where it really needs to be, and it's outside. So what I hate is, if you're at a church right now, let's just say Reading West is the church that really supports this and has those things. All those other young adults from all those other churches, tell them to get out of that church and attend this church. And you guys create an incredible movement amongst yourselves that will gain all kinds of steam. But when we're all spread out trying to fight these little fires about an AY program, and should their jumps be in the church, and should I wear jeans, and this kind of music, y'all ain't got time for that. Y'all have an awesome work. You have so much energy. You're young professionals. You're incredible, and we need you. Like, I don't need y'all worried about drums in church. I don't need y'all worried about if this music should be played. This is where I need you guys. And it is so encouraging to me. And let's please keep in touch, and let's get this thing done, even across the pond. I know we can do a great work together.
Okay, thank you very much, Pastor. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your words. Yeah, I've picked up a lot of ideas that I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna try that as well. So thank you. But carrying on with the discussion, and now just making it a little bit more focused on the UK. One thing I had this conversation with someone just yesterday actually, and they were like, their biggest thing was, we need that unity, but we can't get that unity because we're all coming from so many different places. What would our common ground be? Jewel, I see you. You want to say something?
Like, as Africans, as Caribbeans, as Ashantis and Ga people and Ewe people, and like, I get what we mean by there being division in the Black community, but there's a lot of division with Europeans. They still managed to conquer the world. They split Africa up between themselves and completely divvied up the land and raped the land and left us desolate. So I think a lot of the things that we're talking about in terms of division, it's language. Like, some people speak Welsh, some people speak French, some people speak Spanish. They still manage to conquer the world. Like, when it actually comes down to it, our differences are so minor. We literally look the same. Like, in terms of like, we have various shades of skin color, but we're all Black people. We all have very similar cultures in terms of respect. We hold our elders to high esteem. We try to work hard and make something of ourselves. That's something that is throughout our throughout all of our culture. It doesn't really make sense for us to say that, like, because of our differences, we can't be one, especially as Black people in European countries. That doesn't make sense. But Cheryl, maybe you can give a little bit more background as to why they felt like there were like these differences and what these differences actually are, because maybe that's what I'm naive to.
I think you need to, going off of, historically, like, if I speak to older generation, many of them will talk about, the Africans who came in will talk about how they were treated by Caribbeans when they came in, and then they pass on those prejudice, they'll pass on the prejudice to their kids, and so kids also had that African Caribbean kind of argument. It wasn't until I was in year 11, that's when it was a bit more of a, when Afrobeat started popping, it became more of a thing where actually I can be proud of who I am and where I come from, and so that's when I think I would say I saw a bit more integration between the two different cultures. But if you add on top of that, there's different religions as well. You've got Black Muslims, Black Christians. Even within Christianity, there's Adventists, there's Catholics, there's so many different differences that we all bring to the table. And then to now say, guys, let's all do this one thing together, because everybody's got their own things, everybody's got their own life. I think that's one of the things that we struggle a lot, is coming to that common one thing that we're all going to do and actually doing it, kind of thing.
It's so interesting because the reason why white people were able to justify doing what they did is because they came up with this idea of white people being elite, or being superior, like, from a scientific point of view, they had all like the pseudo science that suggests that they were more intelligent, greater beings than us. So they had, even though they were divided and fought between themselves, they had a joint feeling of, we are greater than these people, so we can do these things to these people, and it doesn't really matter. If anything, one thing that we recognize as Black people is we are fantastic, like genuinely fantastic. And I feel like everyone can note that. It's not a thing of like, we're seeing it and yeah, we're all proclaiming ourselves. The whole reason why there's a certain body type right now that is being proclaimed as fantastic is because we made it fantastic. There's the reason why certain music is popping right now is because we made it pop in. Certain fashion styles because we made it pop in. If we can understand that we are the trendsetters, that we are the blueprint when it comes to certain things, I'm not trying to say that we're elitist or better than anyone else, because in actuality, we can see from a base level that we sold our own people into slavery, thinking that it was a similar thing to the slavery that was already in Africa and in the Middle East, and it wasn't. It was completely different. So we did silly things. So we can't say that we are more intelligent or greater, but we have our own selling point for being a great group of people. So if we identify that as for ourselves, I'm able to be like, we have a creativity that has been stolen from me for years. The reason why so many things are being jacked is because we don't know the right ways to do things. So we don't go through the formalities in order to trademark things. We don't go through the formalities of actually creating things properly, and we take a lot of shortcuts. That's the conversation I was having with my mum yesterday. She was saying that a lot of the time when Black people try and do businesses, they always try and do it in a shady way, because we're about the quick buck, we're about doing things quickly and getting things quickly because of our general oppression and the fact that we're afraid that we're going to lose out on opportunities and stuff. So like there is definitely something about us that is symbiotic, that's about everybody. Do you get what I mean? I hope that's something that people get, because I feel like that's something that I see with, like, as Black people as a whole.
Angelina, and then Jimin.
I was going to say that the thing that should unite us, especially with this current climate, based on the fact that protests are happening because a Black man was killed, a Black woman in America was killed, Black boys in the UK keep getting arrested and profiled for no reason. The thing that should unite us is that the people who are oppressing us don't care where we come from. They're not like, I'm going to go and arrest that Caribbean boy, that African boy. There was a police officer years ago, I saw this video. So even with all of the outrage that came out from George Floyd, I was like, the pain that I felt, it quickly turned to, I'm not surprised though, because years ago I saw a police officer kneel on the back of a teenage girl. I saw a police officer slam a pregnant Black woman to the ground. So the fact that I, as an African woman, can walk down the street and be discriminated against by white people, they don't care that I'm African. I'm a Black person. And that should be the thing that brings us together, is the fact that to them, there is no differentiation between the rest of us. So we need to stop allowing the things that make us different to divide us and use those differences to come together. There's things that the Caribbean community bring into Blackness that the African community don't. There's things that the African community bring to Blackness that the Caribbean community don't. There's things that, like Jewel said, there's things that make us fantastic. And those things that make us fantastic should be the things that we bring together, collect all of the skills, make it work. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to saying, oh, but I'm a Catholic, or I'm an Adventist, and so what? They don't care if you get arrested on the street. They're not asking, are you an Adventist? Oh, okay, okay, I'll let you go. No, you get arrested because you're Black.
Thank you, Ange. Benjamin.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, from experience, especially from an African background, this is, like, sometimes I feel like, for example, in church, if I'm in church, if for example, in my church there's a majority Zimbabwean community. So, and I've always seen it that some would speak to more people, to their own people, if they're Shona, but they wouldn't speak to, they would have looked down on the Bele people. Or in my country as well, Tutsi, Hutu, they just don't work together. And I feel like sometimes some of the things that happen to people in general, whether you're Black, white, whatever you come from, the divisions that you see, are all self-made. Some of them are all self-made, and I always feel like it's all about perspective. Like if we're so focused on looking at the negative things happening and they've happened, but we should be looking. I also feel like we should learn from the negatives, but also try and look at the positive side of things. And like Jewel said before, there's a saying that says that charity begins at home. And I understand that a lot of people want to make great changes. They're looking over into America and what's happening in America. And I'm liking what we're seeing, the unity that's coming through. But at the same time, I think while we're also looking at trying to change what's happening in America, we should also be looking in our very own communities, as in, what can I do to start a change in my own community? And I always see the change like a drop in the ocean. The ripples can go global, but they start from a certain specific spot and then they go globally. So I also think it's about perspective and trying to change within our own communities first of all, while also trying to look at the bigger picture at the same time. And I think one of the most important thing, and I always use this analogy, when you plant a seed for a tree, for an apple tree, the tree doesn't grow next day. You have apples, does it? It takes a long time. And the fruits come later on. And I think sometimes we want things so quickly that we don't realize that some of our fights, some of our work will take a long time. But it's just about how are we ready to persevere and commit for the long term.
Okay, and I see Ada waving at me.
Hello, I know I'm not your age group, but I've really been disturbed with this whole situation. So I just wanted to sit back and listen, but being Auntie Ada, I can't just not say anything. So I've been listening to the pastor and very encouraged with what he's saying. And I just want to start by saying, I cannot imagine what all of you as young people in 2020 are feeling, okay? This is crazy. This is crazy even for those of us who've lived a lot longer than you guys. But this is the world we live in. So how do we cope with this? I just want to tell you a little bit about myself, because at 18, 19, I went to America for uni. I got a scholarship. Because I'm Black, I got a scholarship to Oakwood College, which is an all-Black school. The only white people, maybe 3 or 4, were a couple of professors. It drove me crazy because I had grown up with some missionaries at University of Eastern Africa who are whites, Americans, or whatever, Filipinos, different people. Filipinos are not white, but you know what I mean. There was a mixture. And we had never, my parents never made us think of people as different color, especially, different race. We just thought of everybody as people, good, bad, whatever. Anyway, get to Oakwood College. I've gotten a scholarship, obviously, because I did very well out the valedictorian of my class. I went to an American school in Kenya, a small private school, because my dad wanted me to go to an Adventist school, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, get there, everybody is Black, but we're all different Black, funny enough. So I'm like, who are you? Have you met the African girl from Kenya? Have you met the African girl from Kenya? That was a word around because obviously I'm quite vocal and I guess they were interested. And they'd ask me questions like, how did you get here? And I'd make jokes like, I swam the ocean and blah, blah, blah. And then some of them would believe it. So it was crazy, even in a Black place. Long story short, I couldn't stand the Blackness, to be honest, because it was too negative. It was too draining for me. So I actually moved to but the main reason I moved was because the course, the pre-med I wanted to do, their course wasn't as good. So I moved to Southern, which is mostly white. So anyway, that's a different story. But what I wanted to tell you guys is, you guys are in a very weird situation because most of you are either were born and then brought here at very young age, or you were born here, of parents who were born and brought up in Africa. So you're the first generation that is really British, but African. So it's very weird. So what you're experiencing is unique to a lot of other people your age, or even our age, or even whatever. So anyway, be aware of that. So give yourself some slack. You guys are doing amazing. To even have this conversation, you are doing an amazing thing. My dad was probably one of the first few who went to uni for his age group. So we are like maybe second generation, but for most people, our generation were the first ones to go to uni. So when I'm listening to Pastor Kelly talk about all this stuff, I remember when I finished university and I went to work as intern for medical technology. I worked in a hospital. Sometimes you'd go to draw blood, phlebotomy, we're being taught from phlebotomy. And I remember the patients always saying, you're different. You're not like the other Black people. They would say that. This is 19, before some of you are born maybe, 98-ish, yeah, 96, 97. And they even noticed. So what I'm gonna say to you before I talk too much is, even when I came here, there's a time I taught in the high schools here. And the kids, when we'd get to year 7, there's a bit you do about a race or race, and you have to describe what race. And I would say, I'm Black. But obviously all of you can see it. We take a black piece of paper and I put it against my skin and they say, you're not Black. And then I'll say, but you're white, according to everybody else. And they would put a white piece of paper. None of them are that white. But it's so weird here, awkward for kids to say, Miss, you can't use that word. You can't say you're Black. Because they've been taught, almost like this generation is taught to be so scared of even using the word. So they can't identify, you can't go there, but you're thinking it in your mind. So again, very unique position you're in. So anyway, I'd just like to leave you with 3 things. 1, focus on the positive. Somebody else said, is it Benjamin? I can see the activists in the group, you know, Benjamin, Jewel, Tom. And I know there are a lot of people sending messages whose voice they might not want to speak, but focus on the positive. Unfortunately, we live in a world that we've kind of drawn the short straw, but I don't believe wistfully. I think the one thing Pastor said that made me say, I have to say something, was that God is going to use, because I've been feeling that. I've been asking God, struggling. I said, God, how can this happen? And I keep feeling this positive thing that for the first time, Africa is the safest place. If all these people could run right now, they would have run to Africa. The people could afford it, because guess what? Even with COVID-19, how many cases do we have there? Well, for the first time, I think God has waited to save the best for last. He's going to bring up his people. And I believe what Pastor said. I'm amazed that he said the same thing I've been thinking. We are going to be God's people at the end. So focus on the positive. There are lots of differences that separate us, but focus on the positive and the things that unite us. The fact that I think Jew or somebody said we're all Black, that's enough. That's enough to unite you. Forget the other differences and focus on the positive. Number 2, God makes everything work for good. You might not think what you're doing is going to work for good, but if you trust God, and we have that advantage as Adventist young people or Christian young people or whatever you believe in, stick to your belief and test God and say, God, why are we in this position? Talk to him, because God is looking for people to use to make everything, all this work for good. All these people who've died have not died in vain. God sees, and he's going to use it to work for good. And finally, be the best you can be. If you are the best person you can be, then you have nothing else to answer to. Don't settle for less just because you're Black, or just because your parents think this, or just because this. Believe in God, be the best you can be, and trust God to work everything for good. I wish you all the best, and keep talking. And if you have anything you want to talk about that might not be for your age group, you want to ask us questions, some of us are available. I'm available to talk to anytime. So take care of yourselves and love you all. Mwah.
Thank you so much, Auntie. I actually want to dwell on something she just said. She said, be the best you can be. This is something that I don't know if anyone else has struggled with this, but I had a moment where I was like, well, if the system is so rigged against me, why should I bother keep giving my all, kind of thing. So let's say like I'm at work. If I go to work early, I stay at work late, I'm doing my bit. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But when a promotion comes up, someone else is going to get it, not because they do it better than me, but just because of their color. How can I actually keep going and keep being the best that I can be despite that? And I know I went through a time where I was like, do you know what? You're going to get the basic minimum because you don't want me at my best. So now I'm just not going to do everything that I can do anymore. I'm just going to give you literally what you're paying me for. I don't know if anyone else has gone through that. But it's interesting that Auntie said that, just to continue to be the best that you can be. I'm going to go to Jewel, and then if anyone else has any comments or anything, just put your hand up.
I kind of was like thinking about things as Auntie was kind of speaking, and there was something that she spoke on, which was like the almost snowflake society that we live in now, especially in the UK, where people are very afraid to say things, and people will whisper the word black and will describe someone as everything but their skin color, as to not come across as racist. And I think some of us will perceive this, and although perceive it as annoying, might perceive it as progress. And I think we need to identify that somebody not seeing your race is not progress, because if they can't see that your race, they can't see when you're being oppressed, they can't see when you're being racially profiled, they can't see when a situation is being pushed, where you're basically having microaggressions happen to you, because they're saying that they don't see the things about you that make you different to them. And a lot of the time we see these little things and think it's progress, but in actuality it's a different way to have power over you. So teaching your child that you cannot identify the difference in somebody else is ridiculous, because when they are discriminated against, there's going to be an issue. For example, I don't know, did anyone else see a video of this little boy with his dad? And I think his dad was trying to make a point that his son was like colorblind or something, and he was saying there's no difference between all these kids. There's a very distinct difference between both of those children, and in the world those children are going to be treated differently. And if you don't teach your white child that that other person is going to be treated differently, they're never going to stand up for them, because they cannot see what the difference is. So they're going to assume that something that that person must have done in order to be treated differently, and if anything, that's a way bigger problem. So one thing that I will encourage everyone to do, and I think there's like a lot of fear, because I remember, obviously I went to the protest yesterday and genuinely felt fear for like my job, for the idea that my manager might see me, what that would mean. Like there's so many things that I would be like, and like honestly, I got a message from my compliance manager. He was like, oh yeah, I was there, and she has a mixed race son. So I was like, I felt relief that like a white counterpart was at that was there in the same place with me. So if it ever came up, I had something to back myself on, and that's ridiculous. Like that's genuinely a ridiculous feeling to have. And when it actually comes down to it, at that moment, I was like, the fact that I felt so much fear, I think we need to be ready to lose on something right now in order to gain later, which is I think it's a scary thing. And like having conversations, as you can imagine, I had a really long conversation with my mom yesterday. It keeps coming up, but like a lot of the time there's things that especially as Africans coming to this country, there's been this mentality of, we're going to come here, educate ourselves, go back home. I'm telling you, most of us are not going to go back home. We cannot, like, it's not even necessarily a thing of like, we don't want to. I feel like some people maybe have homes and whatever and will go on holiday, but in actuality, we were being socialized in this space. It would be quite difficult for us culturally to move back home. So in actuality, this is a space that we're going to have to like grow in and develop in. We genuinely need to be able to speak up in situations where we feel like there's microaggressions in place, where we feel like there's racism in place. We need to be able to say that, like, in this space. And I think it's so scary. It's so hard to be able to do this, honestly. And like, I've been thinking about it so much during this time, but call out racism when you see it. Genuinely, even if you don't have that white person being there to stand up for you as well, call out racism when you see it. Write those letters to HR when you see it. When I joined my job in the first 2 weeks, I had the word nigger flying around me, because I work in recruitment and people are mad, like, and people feel like they can say whatever that they want. And I ended up telling my manager, and it being dealt with on a very low level basis. And I had to work with a racist for a year. It's ridiculous. Someone that basically didn't get any, I was always on edge, always feeling like everything was racially motivated. And that is extremely damaging to your mind, like, to go into work every day, someone that you have to give your all to, and knowing that there's someone looking at you that thinks that something about you made them feel like they could call black music nigger shit. in your presence. That's mad, like genuinely mad. And I feel like a lot of us will have experiences like this where we sweep it under the carpet and we don't realize what it's doing to our mental health. This isn't just a, oh, this is how I'm being treated and whatever. Genuinely, every day that you go in and you experience microaggressions, it's damaging your mental health. It's damaging the way that you perceive yourself. It's making you feel uncomfortable, and you need to speak. You need to genuinely speak. So I'm defo rambling now because it is something that makes me so sad. And I feel like if you really sit down and think about it like too much, you can cry over it. Like if you think about the years and years of like having rubbish from like being in primary school to going to secondary school and having your predicted grades just look a bit strange because in comparison to the amount of work that you put into in terms of your white counterparts, all this kind of stuff. We could, if we want to write books, we could all probably write books about it. But at this point, we need to speak up and be okay to lose out for now, because later on our children will be able to walk the streets of the UK and in the US and be able to feel empowered knowing that their parents did something. Like,
amen.
That's it.
It's just to interrupt there, Jewel, I was just listening to you, and one of the things I was going to tell you is when I was in America, I noticed everybody, the Black people, the Black Americans, back then they were Black Americans, while I was there it changed to African Americans, and it changed to something else, but there's always a politically correct word. At the time it was the Black Americans. Their hair, they used to call hair nappy. So suddenly, I come from Africa, I just know I have hair, but suddenly my hair is nappy and it's blah, blah. And there's all this stigma and all this stuff. And the Black people make it worse, I used to say, because I'm generally a positive person and it's the tape that plays in your head. So they're born with this tape playing in your head. And you have to appreciate that your parents have come from Africa, for most of you, have come from Africa. They've come to a place and they're used to imagining or having a tape playing in their head that white people are better, going to Europe, living in Europe is better than living in Africa, living in America, all these things. So you guys are being nurtured and brought up in an environment where even your parents are kind of confused. They might not say that, but it's been a new experience for them. So like that's what I was saying, you guys are very unique, but the tape that plays in your mind. But what I was going to say about your workplaces and whatever, and your schools, for those who are still in school and unis, speak up. Speak up. Cheryl, if you've been working, you've noted that you're whatever, don't go and say, I can't believe you picked this guy because of his color. Just write a message to your boss or whatever and say, I'm really disappointed. Speaking on the I, I'm really disappointed that I didn't get this promotion. I've really worked hard for it. Can you please show me or tell me or what I can do so that next time a promotion comes up, I'll be better prepared and I'll be more likely to get it. That will make them think. So you haven't abused anybody. You haven't played the race card. You haven't played any card. You're just being genuinely honest. You know in your heart that you're thinking it's probably because that person was white, but they're not going to know that. But the fact that you've mentioned it, I have worked. I know. First of all, I'm a woman and I'm a Black woman. Even as a teacher, science teacher, we're teaching the same science. The science teachers, the men earn more. And then the whites earn more. That's just how it is. But no, you have to ask. You say, and then for me, luckily, I was in the private sector, so it says this level. So I check. I go and I check. What do teachers at this level with this much experience earn? And if I'm not earning that, I write an email or I go and speak to the HR and say, why is it that I'm not this? And most of the time, if you question them, they will do something about it. They might not be happy, but most of us Africans, and I've noticed, and this is more, not maybe your generation, I'm talking about my generation, slightly older, like the Sentengas and whatnot. Sorry to mention him, because I know his children are probably online. But they will not question a lot of these things, because that's what you found. Many of them will not question, very few. So start questioning, not in a violent way, not in an aggressive way, just question. Speak up. And when you do that, and I don't know if when you're mentioning about the snowflakiness, my children, I've never taught my children, and that's why I joined your group, because I don't even know how to support my boys with all this stuff, because I've never talked to them about it. We know they're different. They know they're different. They're clever enough kids. Aidan had a situation, the headmistress called me. He was the only Black kid, or 1 out of 2 in reception when he was in reception, and one Black one kid called him, one of his friends called him chocolate. Aiden, you're chocolate. Because they had never seen, they're not used to that because we were in an area where there was mostly. And so the headmistress was like, oh, we need to talk, and made such a big deal and called them both to the office. I'm like, so when they called me, I was like, how do you expect a 5-year-old to process that? So instead of making it a big deal and making it like, oh my goodness, no, tell them yes, in the world. So I went and they were both in the office, said, in the world, they're different people, but God loves us the same. We're all the same. You can see we think the same, we read the same, we play the same. We just have different whatever a 5-year-old can understand. And then as they grow older, you educate them. But we are scared of being Black when there's so many advantages of being Black. So we need to focus on the positive. And remember, there's only one you. So if Jewel doesn't do what Jewel was supposed to do, there'll never be another Jewel. If Cheryl doesn't do what Cheryl was supposed to do, Raphael, George, Rebecca, all these people I'm seeing, if you don't do what you were called to life, you never speak up, your space in life or your space in the world will just pass by and there'll never be another you and it'll be just gone. So no need to be aggressive, no need to be violent, but speak up. Because this goes for the third, and you might not see the results now, but your children, your children's children, will, like somebody said, will live in a better world because of you speaking up or you writing an email.
Okay, thank you. So we're approaching 5 o'clock and normally our sessions run from 3 to 5. So I'm gonna do a quick summary of everything we've heard so far today, so that those who wanna go can go. But we normally do stay on and have further conversation. If anyone still wants to make comments and so on, you still have the opportunity to do that. But what I'm getting from today's conversation is that everybody's appalled. Everybody's at a point where from what I get, a lot of people are at a point where they're ready for some sort of action. We've heard from Pastor Kelly, who told us about what they're doing, and they've got a plan in place that they're calling the Black Wall Street. And what they're going to do is there's loads of different things. Part of it will be protesting, part of it will be supporting Black business, and working together as a community. And what they're doing as a church is finding ways to impact their immediate community. We've discussed how we can use our differences, and the fact that, yes, we are from different backgrounds, we're all Black, we're coming from different places, but our commonality is the fact that we're Black. And so we have that commonality, which means we can band together, we can still work together. We've had people mentioning how the only way we're gonna get the results that we want is if we're, through solidarity. So if we're actually working together. We've had comments around the idea that we need to speak up as a people, and that we shouldn't necessarily just kind of be passive and sit back and accept any of these things that are happening to us. But I think more than anything, as Christians, I think it's fair to say that as Christians, our churches have got their own division, and that makes it a little bit harder for us to unite. The Adventist Church in particular has got division in terms of race and everything, and it does impact how we might go about doing what we're going to go about, but it shouldn't be the thing that stops us. And it is our Christian role to actually make sure that that people who are discriminated against, i.e. Black people, i.e. It could be a disability, it could be all sorts of different things, but whatever it is, if there is discrimination, it is our role to stand up for it. It might not be necessarily going out looting and rioting, but we do need to do something. So that's just a quick summary of what we talked about. I'm gonna say a quick prayer so that those who do want to go can go, and then we'll carry on with the conversation. Kind of just, yeah, let's pray, and then we'll go from there. So let's pray. Thank you, God, for this day. Thank you for this discussion. Thank you for the ideas that have come up. I ask that as we all go about our different activities, we can all take something away and do it in our own lives and make a change to the people who come in contact with us and our communities. Thank you for your love, your kindness, and your Son. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.